You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics, and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 534. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Rise and shine, András.
Rise.
We are recording. It's 5:30 my time. I don't know. I think you're in Europe.
It is 5:30 my time as well, because I'm currently in Italy.
Bella Italia.
Headed home, actually. But it's the last day of my trip. Yeah, I'll spend 3 days home and then on to the next one.
Fantastic. You live such an exciting life.
Well, exciting as it sounds, it's not so much. It's more of a tiring life. But I'm envied by people all over the world. Everyone envies me for traveling and being paid for it. But that's not what I get paid for. I happen to travel a lot, but it's actually, to me, traveling is a pain. It's really cool how everything depends on your perspective on things, right? But it's a good reminder of that. As a skeptic, I find it really fascinating. Okay, so how are you?
I'm quite well, actually. I'm not traveling. I stay put as I used to do.
Good for you.
And lots of things going on, of course, but nothing to really talk about on the podcast. But I keep busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I keep busy as well. So even though my mind is almost constantly focusing on my job when I travel, I occasionally try to entertain myself with stuff. And I just came across an article on The Skeptic. Well, that happens from time to time. They publish very good stuff. And in the latest article that I read, it was Richard Glover discussing something very cool, that there's a growing misconception, of course, in the age of artificial intelligence, that AI systems are somehow these objective, rational, expert sources of information that are untouched by human flaws.
Yeah, but they can sound very convincing, so I understand.
Yes. Yes, but as the article explains, these are large language models. It's obvious that they sound very convincing, but we should not forget that they don't possess intelligence in any meaningful sense. So they generate responses by predicting patterns in vast amounts of historical data, and that data is obviously riddled with the same cognitive biases that humans exhibit, confirmation bias and other familiar errors, that can all find their way into these outputs that we work with, the AI outputs. And it is not because the machines are thinking badly, but because they are reflecting and sometimes amplifying the patterns that are already present in the information they were trained on, and that is provided by us. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they're not thinking at all. They're not thinking at all. There's no intelligence behind it. It's just an algorithm trying to predict the best way to create a convincing reply to whatever you wanted them to do. It is very convincing, but
it is. But you shouldn't forget that if you're turning to AI because you hope to escape human irrationality, what you're doing instead, or might be doing instead, is simply just automating the same thing. So it's not going to be happening in a different way because it was all trained on human input. Well, not anymore, because now it's also trained on AI input. So that is the way of amplifying all this.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just text either. I will talk about that later in a news item.
Oops.
It's also pictures and stuff, but let's get to that when we get there.
Yeah, the last thought about this, also discussed in the article, is that there are lots of ways and lots of fields that we are using this for, from medicine to criminal justice, and where there are algorithms being involved in decision-making process. And being knowledgeable and being thoughtful about these biases is very important when we do that.
Yeah.
We have to scrutinize the tools that we build and all the outputs that we trust. So we shouldn't be fearing AI.
No, it could be a very good starting point, but always make sure that you double check and triple check so that you don't get fooled.
Yes, and understand the limitations. Yeah. That is a very important message, I think, here.
Indeed.
So, yes, it's a thought-provoking read, and I think very useful.
We'll put the link in the show notes.
Obviously, that's what I wanted to say. But let's move on to what we have prepared for our critical thinking audience. Actually, I would love to know if there is anyone listening to the show who are not considering themselves skeptics as such.
Well, I'm sure there are some AI bots listening to us.
Yeah, but really, I would love to know if you're not coming from a skeptical organization, from a skeptical way of life. I would love to know if you find it in any way useful, if you find it interesting in a way. So get in touch by email, info@TheESP.eu. You can get in touch on our Facebook page or Instagram page or Blue Sky. But we love to hear from everyone. Yeah. So please get in touch. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you think and how you found us.
And of course, you can go to patreon.com/TheESP if you want to support us as well. That would be much, much appreciated. And thank you so much to everyone who's doing that already.
Yeah. Anyhow, the show is built up in a certain way, which means that there are segmented parts of the show, and the first segment is usually what we call TWISH, This Week in Skeptical History. Today's skeptical history item is something that I'm really proud to mention on the show because it comes from the predecessor of the organization that I'm currently running, which is the Hungarian Skeptic Society. And it was back on the 7th of June 2002, so more than 20 years ago, when the Hungarian television channel, ATV, launched a short-lived but historically significant, skeptical historically significant program called X-Aknák.
X-Aknák.
X-Aknák. The Hungarian name of X-Files was X-Aknák. But if we translate it to English, it would translate as X-Mines.
Okay.
Like a mine that you can step on and it will blow up. Because it reflects how this is a minefield of all the strange ideas. And this whole show ran for less than a year, but it became a landmark in the development of organized skepticism in Hungary. The core of the show was an experiment, a weekly studio-based debate show that placed extraordinary claims and scientific scrutiny face-to-face, in real time and in front of a national audience. Its mission was simple but ambitious, to demonstrate how evidence-based reasoning really works when confronted with pseudoscientific assertions and to make the process of critical inquiry visible to the public, how we think as skeptics. The structure of the show followed this consistent pattern. Each episode really focused on a single controversial topic. Those topics ranged from energy healing and paranormal abilities to UFO claims and various forms of alternative medicine. And the producers invited two sets of guests, proponents of the claim in question, and experts or skeptics prepared to challenge those claims. The discussion was moderated live, without heavy editing, which was unusual for Hungarian television at the time. And this format made the program unpredictable, sometimes chaotic in a way, but always very entertaining and revealing. It showed viewers not only what people believed, but how they defended those beliefs when pressed for evidence. And I have to mention two figures who were central to the program's identity. Let's talk first about István Vágó, one of Hungary's most recognizable television personalities, who's unfortunately not with us anymore. He died 3 years ago. And he was known primarily as a quiz show host. And I talked about him already on This Week in Skeptical History, actually. So I considered him a mentor of sorts to myself. And he brought both credibility and a calm, methodical style to the moderator's chair. Well, that calmness could not always be maintained. He could occasionally lose it because he was very, very enthusiastic when it came to trying to channel skepticism. His approach was not necessarily confrontational at all times, but instead he guided the conversation by asking for clarification, for sources, and for testable claims. This was the first time many Hungarian viewers saw him in a role explicitly tied to scientific skepticism, and that role he would later embrace more fully as a public advocate for critical thinking. And the second key figure is not unknown to our listeners, and definitely not to you, Pontus. Want to guess who that was?
Well, Gábor Raško.
Gábor Raško.
Yeah, I thought so.
Good guess. So Gábor, who was at some point the chair of EXO, the European Council of Skeptical Organizations, the title you're currently keeping yourself, Pontus, and he was also the previous president of the Hungarian Skeptics, the title I'm holding at the moment. So he was a program's editor, and he's a biologist by training. So Gábor shaped the show's concept. He selected topics and coordinated the often challenging task of bringing both sides to the studio. His later work as chairman of the Hungarian Skeptic Society can really be traced directly back to the experience that he gained during X-Aknák. And in many ways, the show really served as a prototype for the kind of public engagement. And the skeptical movement later would kind of adopt that kind of style, but then we dropped it because we had become more confrontational than that. But there was a recurring problem with X-Aknák. Many invited proponents of paranormal or pseudoscientific claims simply refused to appear, or just withdrew at the last minute. So it became more and more difficult to sustain this structure, the debate-based structure, because it wasn't the only reason why the program had a short run, but it was definitely one of the contributing factors. But it was definitely a milestone for Hungarian skepticism, and pseudoscientific claims had always been, even in Hungarian national television, aired as entertainment. But this program was a bit different because they were held up to scrutiny, and I think that is very cool. We should have more of that.
Yeah. But I there could be a risk, of course, with doing this, because in a debate situation, very often the person who comes out perceived as the winner, quote unquote, of the debate is the good debater, not the one who actually is correct. And you can also say this may give you a false balance. If, you have a flat earther debating with a sensible scientist, you may get the impression that flat Earth theory is just as valid as the other guy's views. So you have to be very careful when you do this. And unfortunately, I guess, I don't know if you can see these episodes anymore at all, but if you can,
some of them you can,
in Hungarian. I don't know if they are
Hungarian.
Subtitled, no?
No. And it's funny you should mention that aspect of winning or losing, because sometimes the same debate was considered a win for
both sides.
Yes, by their own supporters.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see how the reactions went. And but I have to say that some of the central figures in the Hungarian skeptical movement became so because of this. That was the first appearance.
Interesting.
On that show. Well, so 24 years after the debut, I think it's still a good example of how you should approach scientific reasoning and how you should practice it openly on television. So it really helped lay the groundwork for a more organized, more visible skeptical community in Hungary, which ended up being the Hungarian Skeptic Society. So,
interesting.
Gábor, if you're listening to this, we celebrate you and your show with István Vágó, and that was a great milestone of Hungarian skepticism. And the first one of that show aired on the 7th of June 2002. But that brings us to the next segment, which is the news round. So what's been happening across Europe?
I have a follow-up to a news item from last week. So I talked about a Norwegian guy called Steiner Vangen, who had contacted people online to quote-unquote help, or rather convince people to end their lives. So this is a serious topic, of course.
Oh yeah, I remember,
Yeah. So there were more than a handful of people in Sweden and Norway, and several of them are now unfortunately dead. And we don't know exactly if that was their honest wish or not. But apparently this guy, Vangen, is a small fish compared to other people out there, I've learned. So now there is this Canadian guy called Kenneth Law, who makes Wangen seem like an amateur. And I know he's Canadian, but he has been operating all over the world, not in the least in the UK. So this man, and it's ironic that he's called Law, because now he's on trial in Canada for aiding in the deaths of 14 people in the province of Ontario in Canada. He has pled guilty of assisting suicide for these 14 people. But the story is much bigger than that. He has, through several websites, sold at least 1,200 lethal, quote-unquote, suicide packages to people in 41 different countries, including not only Canada, but the US, Italy, Australia, and New Zealand, and more. And in addition to that, at least 286 individuals in the UK have received such packages from Law, and that has led to 112 deaths in the UK alone. That we know of. This is from the police investigation.
Oh my God, what this guy is doing is basically massacre.
Yeah, terrible. So if a person helps another person to end their life, you could in some cases argue that they're doing them a favor under certain very specific circumstances, of course. But that can't be said about this Kenneth Law person. On his website, he has had regular shops of online products, trying to camouflage it a bit by having several legitimate projects as well, often food-related, to appear to be an industrial food prep wholesaler. At the time of his arrest, Law had received almost 300,000 Canadian dollars on his Spotify and PayPal accounts, linked to 4 different companies that he was running. The trial is now ongoing and sentencing is expected in September, but this is only for these specific 14 Ontario cases. So, as I told you, there are hundreds more to look into, and I don't know if and when they will go to trial. As I said last week, I am in favor of assisted deaths under controlled and medically sound settings. You have to have rules for these things, otherwise you create a market like this for unscrupulous and greedy villains like this Law guy. And just to make sure the skeptical angle to this, why I talk so much about that, the reason we're so reluctant to accept assisted death in our culture is either outright religious or superstitious reasons. So the big religions in the world have taught forever that matters of life and death are divine and life is a gift and that it is unacceptable to interfere with that. But what about the freedom to decide for yourself? In certain cases, very well regulated, of course, to avoid mistakes, the most humane thing must be to let the person decide for themselves, not to let old religious nonsense and superstition to get in the way. But to create an environment that is sound around us, we have to regulate it. We can't just say it's forbidden, because that just invites the things that we are seeing now with Wangen in Norway and this Law guy in Canada. We can't just ignore the problem by saying, no, it's forbidden because God said so.
Yeah, it has to be discussed properly. And all the different aspects have to be explored. There's no other sensible way to do that. And when it comes to sensible ways, educating the public or standing up for science and the scientific way is very important. And it is often unpopular, especially among those who are supporting something unscientific. So I'm trying to segue now to the John Maddox Prize that is now open for nominations. And that is a prize, for those of you who don't know, offered by Sense About Science and Nature, with the support from the Royal Society as well. That is one of the most respected international awards that recognize individuals who stand up for science, often when it's difficult, unpopular, or even risky to do so. And the nominations for the 2026 John Maddox Prize are open now. We tell that to our listeners every year, but I think it's a good reminder. The prize honors the legacy of Sir John Maddox, the longtime editor of Nature, who was known for his uncompromising commitment to evidence-based public debate. Each year, the award highlights people who have shown exceptional courage and integrity in promoting sound science, especially in the face of misinformation, political pressure, or organized hostility even. Last year's winners illustrate the breadth and impact of the prize. Virginia Burkett was honored for her decades of work on climate change impacts on ecosystems and for insisting on the honest communication of evidence despite political interference. The Early Career Award went to Nicolas Zanetta Colombo, whose research and community engagement around heavy metal contamination near Chilean copper mines brought scientific clarity to a highly charged public health issue. And these examples show what the Maddox Prize is really about. Not just doing good science, but defending it publicly, transparently, and with integrity. So nominations are open from the 1st of June until the 2nd of August this year, and the organizers are once again encouraging submissions from all regions of the world and across all scientific disciplines. As in previous years, the prize includes both a main award and an early career category, as I mentioned, ensuring that emerging science communicators and researchers are also recognized for their contributions. Anyone can nominate a candidate, whether you're a colleague, a member of the public, or part of an organization that has witnessed someone's commitment to evidence under pressure. Submissions can be made through Sense About Science, and questions can be directed to their team at hello@senseaboutscience.org. But there is an actual link that you can follow on the show notes if you're interested. I think the real-world responsibility of communicating good science requires courage, persistence, and a willingness to confront misinformation head-on. So go and nominate someone that you think is worthy of such a prize.
Yeah, please do. All right, we mentioned AI before, and the advertising online environment is not easy to handle. Sometimes it feels more like the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
And it is rapidly changing with AI. At the recent Google Marketing Live event, Google outlined their expanded strategies when it comes to AI systems for digital ads. And this is how they see it will work in the future. They want to integrate picture ads directly into AI chatbot conversations. There could also be discounted prices that only you see based on your browsing behavior, your perceived intent to buy the product, and what's available locally just for you. They will also launch generative AI suites for the advertisers for producing online ads, start to finish, with not much human intervention. When it comes to Meta and ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, they have also accelerated the rollout of their own AI-driven advertising systems. Meta is expanding tools to automatically generate and personalize ad images, video backgrounds, captions, and targeting across Facebook and Instagram feeds. ByteDance TikTok Symphony suite can already generate promotional videos and scripts, AI avatars, dubbed voiceovers, and creator-style content from simple text prompts or even product links. You just put a link in there and it will create all the advertising for you. And at the same time, ads are becoming harder to recognize. Instagram and Facebook recently made a small change to how they show ads. They changed it from labeling them sponsored, which is a longer word, and they just put ad as a marker, which makes it harder to spot that this is actually sponsored content or ad content. In an article in The Conversation, which we will link to, they describe this, the Conversation described this as a steady erosion of clear boundaries between advertising, entertainment, recommendation, and normal social interaction. And obviously this is bad enough for ordinary products, but AI-driven dynamic advertising is especially concerning when it comes to products that are unhealthy, harmful, or regulated, or should be regulated in a way, like alcohol, gambling, things like that. And the trend is that ads appear very quickly one moment and are gone the next, which makes it very difficult or perhaps even impossible to make sure that they comply with relevant regulations. I mean, they're just there and then they're gone again before you have time to scrutinize them. So the Conversation, very sensibly, calls for countermeasures. We need better regulations, and this is what they propose. First, consistent and clear human and machine-readable advertising labels across formats and services. So it should be extremely clear what is an ad and what is not. Accessible ad archives for public interest scrutiny, including AI variations. So we need to have documentation so that one can see what the ads actually looked like in order to make sure that they follow the regulations. Inclusion of meaningful and accurate information about targeting and delivery. So that is about how and why certain ads appeared for specific users. And lastly, clear identification of AI-generated or AI-mediated advertising, including specifics on how AI was used. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So it is going to be harder and harder to see what is advertising or not, what is AI-generated or not, and misinformation will spread even quicker than today unless we do something about it. And of course, we have to have regulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And I'd like to finish on the German skeptical event SkepKon 2026. Don't worry, I'm not repeating myself from last week when we reported that the event took place. But now, the German skeptical organization GWP has just announced that there are several interviews that were recorded during SkepKon 2026 and are already available online now, which gives those who couldn't attend a bit of a chance to catch up with some of the event's most interesting conversations. So, just a reminder, SkepKon was held this year in Regensburg, in Germany, and that is the largest skeptical conference of Germans and brings together scientists, communicators, philosophers, and skeptics to discuss pseudoscience, critical thinking, and science communication, all that jazz. Oh, and these interviews are all in German, just a reminder. So if you're following the links, don't be surprised if you don't understand it.
Well, it's a good opportunity to practice your German, right?
Yes, practicing German. Yeah, I would love to practice my German, but I would have to build it up first. That is a bit of an issue that I have, unfortunately. Actually, German is a fascinating language, especially with an unusual word order that it has.
Very often puts the verb at the end.
Yes. And by the time you get to the verb, you explained all the necessary details and all the circumstances. And then at the end, okay, come on, say it. What are we doing?
What are we doing to the ball? Oh, it's rolling. Okay, yes, fine.
It's a rolling red ball somewhere in the universe. Anyhow.
Yeah, well, interestingly, just a side note, Swedish used to be more flexible than it is today. In Swedish, you could put the verb at the end very much like they do in German a long time ago. It was still not the common way, I think, but you could do it, and you can see it in older text, and you can see it in poems, because it makes you if you want to get it to rhyme, sometimes you could put the verb at the end and it makes it rhyme, and so it happens. Anyway, that's sort of beside the point.
Yeah. Anyhow, I think I was going to say that among the first interviews, there was a conversation with Adrian Rosetta, who discusses a question that many skeptics wrestle with, and that is how people actually change their minds. Rather than focusing on facts alone, this discussion explores the roles of psychology, communication, and conversation techniques in persuasion, which many of us find really fascinating. I really regret that my German is very poor. I can say ja and nein. So you know that joke, right? I asked my German friend if he knows what the square root of 81 is, and he said no.
Nine, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. Another interview that tackles the increasingly controversial topic of cancel culture, and that is with researcher, philosopher of science, Nikhil Mukherjee, whom we actually had on episode 252 for an interview. Yep. So you can go back and listen to that. And he was in discussion with a content creator, Varnan, discussing where legitimate criticism ends and where social or professional ostracism begins. And that is a debate that has become common far beyond skeptical circles, but had a very profound effect on skeptical circles as well. I think especially in Germany recently, but let's not get into that too deeply. Scientific integrity is also on the agenda. Forensic molecular biologist Cornelius Kortz warns about the growing threat posed by so-called paper mills, organizations that manufacture fraudulent scientific papers for researchers seeking publications. We have mentioned that on several occasions on this show. The interview examines especially using Retraction Watch as a source for those discussions.
Good.
And this interview examines how these practices can undermine trust in science in general and what can be done to protect research standards. And in a more personal discussion, Varnan responds to criticism that has been directed at him over recent years, reflecting on the challenges of public engagement and debate in the online age. So, these interviews offer a bit of a snapshot of the themes that characterize this year's SkepKon: science communication, academic integrity, freedom of debate, and the practical challenges of promoting critical thinking in a rather polarized world. So if you're interested in what's going on there, they're well worth a look, and obviously we'll provide you with the link.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of the news round, so we are about to find out who's been really wrong lately. Or really right.
All right, I think we focus too much on bad things a lot of the time, so let's end on a positive note today. Mm-hmm. But of course, as is often the case, we must start with a problem. And the problem in question is that so many universities, which really should know better, cannot seem to not spread misinformation. Many universities provide education, if you can call it that, within areas that are baloney. I'm talking about things like aromatherapy, acupuncture, reflexology, homeopathy, things like that. Things that are obviously without any plausibility and scientific credibility. So-called complementary or alternative medicine, non-conventional healthcare practices, and things like that. So still these things are often taught at what we otherwise consider respectable universities. And it's not just that these things do not work, it's also that they are being taught in these highly regarded institutions, which gives them legitimacy, which they do not deserve at all. So, in France alone, more than 200 university diplomas are said to exist in such areas. We're talking about reflexology, aromatherapy, I can't even pronounce that, auriculotherapy, which is acupuncture, but only on the ear. Whether you see the ear as it's sort of mixed between reflexology and acupuncture, because you have the ear as the symbol for the whole body, and part of the earlobe might be the liver or whatever. Nonsense, of course. But also hypnosis, normal acupuncture, of course, if that's normal, homeopathy, meditation, and other nonsense. But the good news now, this may be changing. The Higher Council for the Evaluation of Research and Higher Education is preparing to review these kinds of courses nationally in France and hopefully make sure that they are thrown out. This will be the topic for the next Conference of Deans of Faculties of Medicine, or La Conférence des Doyens de Facultés de Médecine. Or Medicine? I don't know. Medicine. Probably.
Nice. I'm no expert on French, but I really like your attempt.
I have a big problem with French because my pronunciation is said by others to be convincing, which means people think I know French, but I know a little. But
yes, I've come across that issue as well.
Yeah.
Je ne parle pas français. I can say it very convincingly, and then they
say something else that you don't understand. Yeah, they reply with something else. Okay, so the dates for this conference is not yet published. At least I couldn't find it. But according to an article in La Gazette France, there is a big dissatisfaction growing within the members of the medical faculties. And this name I don't know how to pronounce. It's spelled, if you were an Englishman, you would call it Marc Humbert, but I'm sure in French he is pronounced more like Marc Humbert, maybe, like something like that. Anyway, this guy, he is the vice president of the conference, and he was also dean of the Faculty of Medicine at Paris-Saclay University. And he made this public statement. We will request an assessment of training programs as well as the audit and withdrawal of training programs on non-validated care practices. End quote. Mm-hmm. So hopefully some good will come out of this, but the mere act of speaking up against university-sponsored quackery earns la conférence des doyens de faculté de médecine this week's award for being really right. Go get them!
Yes. And let's hope that many similar conferences in other countries will follow suit.
Yes.
Because that should be the case. That should be... It has to be dealt with by the circles of science themselves. So we cannot wait for others to do that.
No.
You just have to get rid of the bad stuff.
Indeed.
All right. So thank you very much, Pontus. That was a very deserving, really right, I think.
Thank you.
But that brings us to the end of this week's episode. And the end of the episode is always marked by a quote. All right. And this week's quote comes from, well, I think it's only fitting that I bring you a quote from an Italian giant of science education and skepticism. One of the founders of CICAP, the Italian Comitato Italiano per il Controllo delle Affermazioni sulle Pseudoscienze. Yeah. So it is a really cool organization taking care of lots of events. A huge one is called CICAP Fest, and that was co-founded by Piero Angela. And in a TV show, in a TV interview, he said the following. Many people are drawn to magical thinking, to the idea of something gentle and natural that treats not the symptoms, but the person. Trust doctors. Don't be taken in by these things that are circulating. Science demands intellectual honesty. And let us not forget that Galileos of this world are not the people selling magical thinking. Science is built on doubt. The speed of light is not decided by a show of hands or by majority vote.
Hear, hear. Well said.
Yes. Well, that was my translation from Italian. I couldn't find anything in English from him, but...
Well, I'm happy you didn't do it in Italian, because then I wouldn't have understood it.
Oh, I would have liked it, but no, I'm not going to go there. But instead, I'd like to thank you, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
Many, many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so, and until next week, goodbye.
Hej då!
Visla.
This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu, follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social, like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
Around the grey work. Around the grey work. Okay, it's getting worse. So, Comitato Italiano per il Controllo delle Affermazioni Pseudoscienze. Okay.
Scienza. Yeah.
I wanted to do it by heart, and I just
almost made it. You almost made it.